I never thought I could find hope in the most unfair moments of life. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The sky was impossibly gray, heavy with the weight of unspoken words. My heart raced as I stood in that sterile hospital room, sweat clinging to my palms. The room smelled of antiseptic and despair, a sharp reminder of the reality hitting me like a brick wall. My mom, frail and fragile, lay there, an echo of the vibrant woman who once spun laughter into our dullest days. I remember the way tears streamed down my face, each drop like molten lava, burning my cheeks. It felt like the world had come to a standstill, the rhythmic beeping of machines the only sound in the silence that enveloped us. I clenched my fists, struggling against the reality that shattered my hope. Mom had always been my rock. Through every challenge, she stood strong, a lighthouse guiding me through murky waters. But on that fateful day, I watched helplessly as life slipped away from her, the whispers of fate taunting me with every second. I felt the lump in my throat grow, a cruel reminder of my helplessness. Outside the window, a storm began to brew, mirroring the tempest raging inside me. "Please, just hang on," I had whispered, trembling hands gripping hers. The warmth of her hand, once comforting, now felt like a fading memory. I could almost hear her voice, a gentle breeze of encouragement that had fueled my dreams. But what good were dreams if they were built on dying embers? I was losing her, a slow realization pounding in my chest like a drum. The doctor entered, his expression grim. I looked into his eyes, searching for a glimmer of reassurance, but all I found was a reflection of my own fear. He spoke, words spilling from his lips like dark, heavy rain. "We'll do our best," but that twisted the knife deeper. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed in the hallway, breaking the fragile silence. Footsteps thundered, and voices rose in panic. It pulled me from my spiral, jolting me from the suffocating grip of despair. I rushed out into the chaos, instincts kicking in. My heart raced as I surveyed the scene unfolding before me. Paramedics rushed past, faces taut with urgency, and a crowd gathered, murmuring anxiously. I squeezed through, drawn like a moth to a flame. In the middle of it all stood a girl, her pale face streaked with dirt and tears. Her eyes were wide, filled with an unspeakable fear, a reflection of my own. She was lost in the crowd, the weight of pain pressing down on her fragile shoulders. I felt a surge of understanding wash over me. Could this be it? An unexpected turn, a path to something greater than our individual suffering? The idea flickered, barely ignited, yet so potent. My heart ached for her. Maybe in this chaos, we could find strength together. But then, a voice sharp, clear, and authoritative pierced through the air. "We need someone to identify the woman." I froze, my breath hitching. There was only one woman I thought about, the one fighting for her life behind closed doors. Was it fate? Was it unfairness colliding in tragic beauty? I glanced at the girl, her pain mirroring my own. At that moment, everything paused, the world fading away. What would I choose? My mom or a stranger, both standing on the precipice of loss? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. I stood there at the edge of chaos, the cacophony of voices swirling around me like a tempest. My heart thrummed in my ears as I looked back toward the hospital doors, the weight of that decision pressing heavily on my shoulder. I was meant to stand by my mother, to fight for her, and yet here I was, torn between despair and the desperate plea echoing from the crowd. The girl swayed next to me, her small frame trembling under the enormity of the moment. "Is she okay?" she whispered, the quiver in her voice a sign that she was on the brink of breaking apart. I wanted to reach out to her, to reassure her, but the words were trapped in my throat. A heavy silence fell for a heartbeat, and in that instant, all I could hear was the faint beeping from my mom's room, slowly fading into an ominous hush. I could have sworn I felt my heart synchronize with that sound, each pulse drawing in the realization that every moment mattered. I felt paralyzed, alone in this emotionally charged space where two worlds collided. In a sudden rush, I grasped the girl's shoulder, forcing her to lock eyes with me. What happened? My voice came out steadier than I felt, but I needed to know if she was okay. There was something about her that was so utterly vulnerable, a mirror reflecting the cracks in my own heart. It was a car accident, she stammered, tears spilling over as she spoke. My sister, she wasn't breathing. The admission broke like glass, and I could see behind her eyes the weight of the world she was carrying. I just don't know if she's going to be okay. Each word she spoke fractured the air between us, echoing the fear clawing at my insides. This girl, a stranger, was living her nightmare, and suddenly, I felt a pulse of empathy surge within me. Perhaps in this moment of darkness, we could be each other's light. I am so sorry, I murmured, squeezing her shoulder gently to convey the small hope I still clung to. Let's find out together. Our connection deepened, yet my feet felt cemented in place as I glanced back toward the hospital, where my own heart teetered on the brink of shattering. Two have to go, I blurted, but not without stealing a moment to intertwine my fingers with hers. Stay strong, okay? There was a fleeting look of gratitude across her tear-streaked face as I rushed inward, past the frantic crowd. My focus sharpened, every step buoyed by a desperate need to be with my mother in those final moments. I stumbled into the sterile haze of the hospital corridor, the scent of antiseptic now a familiar comfort that wrapped around me like a blanket, but as I approached the door, a shadow fell across my path. A nurse emerged, her expression strained. "You," she said breathlessly, her face pale, as though she, too, was bearing the weight of the world. "We need someone to help identify a woman. She's in critical condition." My heart plummeted. Is it my mom?" I asked, praying for an answer I dreaded yet needed. "I can't disclose," she began, but the urgency of the moment pierced the air, and I interrupted, "Please. It's my mom." My voice cracked, desperation clawing its way through the suffocating silence. The nurse hesitated, glancing behind her as if the looming specter of tragedy was chasing her. "Follow me. But I need you to prepare yourself for what you might see," she finally said, leading me down a dimly lit hallway. The beeping grew louder, a relentless reminder of the reality that awaited me. Each step felt as though I was navigating through treacle, thick and reluctant. Memories of my mother flickered like a flickering light bulb above, reminding me of laughter, warmth, and the love that had defined my life, and yet, as we approached, another wave of realization crashed over me. This wasn't just about me and my mother anymore. It was about hope, about the shared struggle of the unknown. My heart thudded painfully as the nurse opened the door, and all I could do was stand at the threshold, the air thick with uncertainty. In that moment, everything that had tethered my life began to unravel further. Suddenly, a loud voice pierced through the fog, shouting from the hallway we had just come from. "We need more help. Another casualty is here." There was an urgency, an alarm in their tone that sent chills racing down my spine. I turned, dread coiling within me. My eyes caught a glimpse of the girl from earlier, her face paled even more now, drawing closer to the source of the commotion, fear aching behind her eyes. And, at that moment, I knew. I was on the precipice of losing not just my mother, but a connection forged in shared suffering, bound by the fragility of life itself. "Stay here." I called to the nurse, taking a deep breath and sprinting back down the corridor. If I were to find strength, if hope was to bloom from this darkness, I had to hold on to every sliver of love that lingered in the air. But fate is a cruel mistress. A figure came into view, collapsing just ahead. Panic gripped my heart as I recognized the distress in the crowd, the faces pale and frantic. And as I rushed forward, the name caught in my throat like broken glass: the girl's sister, lying lifeless on the floor. In an instant, time froze, the unbearable weight of loss crashing over us all. I could barely breathe as reality whipped me back into the swirling tempest. And as I reached out to the girl, instinctively sharing the burden of her unbearable pain, the world around us blurred into nothingness. The fight was not over, but I realized then that no matter how far the darkness stretched, hope could still forge its way through the cracks, one heartbeat at a time. The air was thick with resignation as I knelt beside the girl's sister, the figure seeming too still against the harsh floor tiles. I could feel the heat radiating from the crowd, fear and grief coiling tightly in the atmosphere. Shattered gasps echoed around us, punctuated by the distant wail of sirens that added layers to the overwhelming turmoil. Please, no, the girl's voice was a whisper, raw as it seeped from her shattered heart, breaking against the unforgiving reality. I gripped her shaking hands, threading my fingers through hers as if that small connection could anchor us both in an ocean of despair. Help is coming, I muttered, but my own heart wavered under the weight of uncertainty. I could see the panic in the eyes of those around us. The nurses were overwhelmed, and the sounds of frantic communication buzzed like a swarm of angry bees, failing to provide the solace we all craved. Amidst the chaos, a flicker of movement caught my eye. A woman, frazzled yet fierce, emerged from the crowd. She stumbled to the girl, her face transforming from bewildered exhaustion into a picture of urgent care. With a gentle ferocity, she reached for the sister, desperately performing CPR, each rhythm a pulse of will against fate's cruel grip. That I could sense the girl beside me begin to fade, her spirit dulled by heartache as she silently watched the efforts unfold. And at that moment, I knew I had to be more than a witness. I had to be a lifeline to the hope that lingered just out of reach. Stay with me, I urged, my voice a steady anchor amidst the turbulence. That I can't lose her, I can't. She cried, the weight of vulnerability stripping her raw, and I felt the tears brim in my own eyes as the fragility of life crashed around us. The world felt impossibly heavy, each moment laden with unspoken fears. Yet, I remembered my mother and the battles we had faced together. My heart shook with resolve as I pulled the girl closer, forcing her to look into my eyes. You have to believe she's fighting. We can't let despair in. Not now. For a heartbeat, clarity flickered across her features. She nodded in hesitant agreement, that spark of hope rekindling something deep within. Encouraged, I squeezed her hand tighter, mirroring the rhythm of the woman's desperate compressions. Each beat that landed within her chest became a barrier against that ever-looming darkness, but just as it seemed like our combined strength could pierce the haze engulfing us, a harsh voice blared through the confusion, the doctor's voice, commanding and effective. Clear the area. We need more room. The command cut like a knife, and the bystanders began to shuffle, distanced from the scene as if heartbreak was contagious. I watched helplessly as the girl's face fell. I quickly glanced over my shoulder towards the doctor's frantic movements as they rushed forward, the tension in the air thickening. Then, a realization struck me. Here was a chance, however slim. They're here to help, I whispered, trying to imbue my tone with strength as I gently nudged the girl closer to her sister. Let's breathe through this together. Tears spilled over her cheeks, but she closed her eyes, drawing in shaky breaths as if replaying previous moments spent with her sister. Laughter, teasing, warmth wrapped in shared memories. I felt my own heart twist painfully in response, wishing I could share all of my treasured moments with her, wishing I could give her a taste of the love that had once enveloped mine. Remember when we were kids? She whispered instead, her voice fragile but reminiscing. We played in the park, the swings. I pushed her so high, she thought she could touch the clouds. The bittersweet warmth in her voice contrasted sharply against the reality we faced. She always made me feel brave. Her words ignited a flicker within me, a small ember of possibility that fought against the engulfing shadows. Then let's be brave together, I replied softly, allowing her to retrieve strength from our connection. Breathe. Focus on that love. It will guide you. But before she could respond, another explosion of commotion erupted at the far end of the corridor, distant cries now merging into a singular voice of chaos. I turned instinctively, heart racing, as I registered the unmistakable form of my mother being wheeled on a gurney. Contained chaos surrounding her. No. I gasped, the world tilting beneath me as I wrestled with the reality of our situation. The nurse I had spoken with earlier was now shouting orders, the logistics of emergency taking precedence over the emotional wreckage that tethered my spirit. I felt my own heartbreak rip open as I caught sight of her frail figure, so helpless yet still holding on a mirror of despair and courage consumed in the same breath. But just as quickly as the fear surged, the girl's hand tightened around mine. "You can't give up either," she exclaimed, her voice resolute despite the tears that fell. "Not while there's still hope," and within the cacophony of anguish, we braced ourselves together, wrapped in a storm of grief but anchored by a bond more resilient than I had realized. We drew strength from each other as the sirens carried on, their haunting melody becoming a strange camaraderie shared among fears intertwined, yet just as we took a breath, the doctor's voice cut through once more, ringing with an urgency that sent shockwaves through the air. "We have another patient that just came in multiple fractures, unconscious. We need to divide our resources." The oppressive weight of those words hung heavily, and I felt myself retreat to the edge of panic. The threads of fate had twisted further, and with the ripples of uncertainty weaving their way through my mind, a truth settled heavily upon my chest. I was standing at the crossroads of love and loss, but it was a dizzying precipice from which I couldn't look away, and as the world around us spiraled deeper into chaos, I realized that the very fabric of hope was fabricating an uncharted path, a journey still far from its conclusion. In that moment, hand in hand with a stranger who had become my lifeline, I took a determined step forward into even greater uncertainty. The sirens wailed like lamenting spirits, a discordant chorus that blared through the sterile hallways. I stood at the precipice of uncertainty, my heart split between the urgency of my own mother's condition and the desperation radiating from the girl beside me. "Please, just hold on," I whispered, as though my words could weave strength into the fabric of our reality. The girl's grip tightened around my hand, a silent promise that we would tackle this storm together, even as the winds of fate howled viciously around us. The chaos in the emergency room swelled, each crash of equipment and frantic shout met with a volley of fear threading through the atmosphere. They were calling for blood, for volunteers to help carry equipment, for everyone to reorient themselves to accommodate more patients. My heart raced anew as I realized just how many lives were now intertwined in the tumult. A seasoned nurse dashed past us, eyes scanning for help, her demeanor both fiery and fervent. "You," she shouted, pointing directly at me. "We need someone to assist in the triage area." I hesitated, my heart caught in a snare of conflicting emotions. How could I leave the girl, this fragile being who had become my tether in a universe gone mad? She sensed my hesitance and met my gaze. "Go," she urged, her voice steadier than I felt. "It'll be all right. Please." Something sparkled in her eyes, an ember of hope. It ignited a resolve within me, a silent accord that declared our fight was far from over. I had to believe it. With a final squeeze of her hand, I turned, breaking away into the fray. The white walls blurred in my peripheral vision as I sprinted toward the triage, adrenaline flushing every thought. The nurse led me to a small area, where another patient, an elderly man with shallow breaths, lay strained against the mechanical beeps of monitors. "Just keep him calm," she instructed, her hands moving with the grace of practiced precision. "Talk to him while I get supplies." That I grasped the man's frail hand, weathered and rough yet still warm with life. "Hey there," I said, forcing a smile that was both sincere and wobbly. "You're going to be all right. They're going to help you." But as I spoke, the true alarm began to sink in. With every reassuring word, I struggled against the encroaching shadows of despair. I glanced back over my shoulder just as the girl's head dropped, a small whimper escaping her lips as she watched the nurse continue her hectic dance among the chaos. My heart echoed her pain, a shared sorrow rapidly twisting our fates together like an unbreakable knot. Time unraveled as moments slashed through the endless horrors, the elderly man's ragged breaths, the sounds of distant shouts, and the tremor of my own heart racing toward a fear I knew too well. Just then, a soft female voice broke through. "Hey," it called, and I turned, my eyes landing on a young nurse who had just arrived with fresh supplies. "You're doing great," she said, a genuine warmth radiating from her. "Keep talking to him." Something about her kindness settled within me, like a gentle rain meeting parched earth. It was as though she had gifted me a piece of that delicate sensibility that stirred the embers of hope again. With her presence, I focused back on the man, reciting memories of my own grandparents' laughter and the wisdom gleaned from years lost. I painted pictures with my words, of sunny days and familial love that burrowed down deep. The feeble light in his eyes seemed to brighten as he tried to follow along, a spark igniting within, but despite these small moments of grace, the reality of the situation pressed in harder, each moment pulling at the threads of our shared fears. I felt tethered not only to this man but also to the unknown that lay ahead for the girl. As if she could sense my turmoil, the young nurse leaned in just enough for me to catch her eye. "You're not alone," she whispered softly, and it was a balm to my frayed nerves. "Well, get through this. You're doing amazing work." Her encouragement fortified my spirit, and I nodded silently, immersing myself deeper in the present. But the conflicting anguish remained, wrapping around my chest like an iron band, squeezing tighter with each passing moment. And just as a wavering breath escaped the elderly man's lips, a scream erupted from down the hallway. My breath caught in my throat, fear slamming against my ribcage. Panic swept through the triage area like a wild fire, igniting a new wave of resolve. Or was it desperation? "Stay here," the nurse demanded as she rushed toward the source of the commotion, leaving me caught in a storm of uncertainty. The moments between seconds felt years long, and I stood paralyzed, forced to balance what I had just begun to grasp against the unseen horrors unfolding. Then, like a cruel twist of fate, my phone buzzed insistently in my pocket. Heart thrumming, I pulled it out, a message from the girl, trembling with raw emotion. "Find me when you can. I need you. I can't do this alone." The world narrowed down to the weight of those words, a tangled thread that pulled tighter with the knowledge that her fight mirrored my own. But the urgency of the moment clawed at me, fingers stretching toward unknown futures as dread slithered through me like ice. The chaos around us threatened to sever the threads of hope that we had fought so hard to weave. As I stood there, engulfed in conflicting emotions, another scream shattered the air. It was close now, closer than I ever wanted to believe. With everything precariously balanced, I had to Chusito answer the call of my own heart or to remain a stalwart for a girl who had woven her grief into mine, and as the chaos swelled once more, the air crackled with an energy I had never known, an energy that promised either destruction or the birth of a new dawn. The seconds elongated like shadows stretched across the tremulous ground, an insistent reminder of the chaos swirling around me. The screams, the cries for help, the rapid footsteps of nurses darting like shooting stars against a darkened sky, merged in a haunting symphony of desperation. My heart, already battered by fear, now hammered furiously as if it sought release from the dread cocooning me. "Stay here," had been the nurse's command, but the grip of duty intertwined with my own rising panic. How could I remain still when there was a girl counting on me, a world spinning out of control? I glanced over my shoulder toward the distant hallway where the screams had originated. Voices clashed in confusion, rising to a fever pitch. The elderly man beneath my hands continued to battle for breaths that came in harsh gasps. I leaned closer, my fingers lacing through his, granting him all the warmth my frail courage could muster. "You're a warrior," I whispered, forcing a tranquil calm over both our trembling spirits. But thoughts of the girl haunted me, her image interwoven with the words I tried to impart to this man. As time clashed against compassion, I felt torn, a fraying cord pulled between my duty to the stranger before me and my loyalty to the girl who had offered me her fragile trust. Heroism felt like an ill-fitting cloak, one I could hardly support beneath its overwhelming weight. "Help!" The new scream sliced through me, the sharpened edge of desperation lacing the air. A flood of anxiety poured through my veins, filling me with urgency that would not relent. I made my decision. I could no longer linger on the fringe of the chaos. With a deep breath, I abandoned the man's side, reluctance gnawing at my heartstrings as I sprinted towards the source of the horror that echoed down the corridor. My body propelled by instinct, fear, and a glimmer of determination that I rushed past a cluster of hurried nurses, the energy of their movements mingling with mine until we all became one. Puffs of adrenaline formed a bridge of urgency that danced around the sound of echoing sirens. Rounding a corner, I stumbled upon a scene that made the air in my lungs freeze. The the girl, crumpled on the ground, her sobs nearly unrecognizable beneath the raucous chaos. 2 paramedics surrounded her, each attempting to provide assistance, but the frantic panic in her eyes spoke of a deeper, consuming fear, one that mirrored my own struggles. I can't breathe," she gasped, her hands clawing at her chest as if to pull the weight of her distress from suffocating her. I rushed to her side, knelt, and grasped her hands, knowing that warmth could weave a thread of comfort amidst the tumult. "Hey, I'm here." "It's okay," I murmured, the words tumbling out on a shaky breath. Instinctively, I began to recount stories from my childhood, easy tales of summer days and gentle laughter, each word a fragile lifeline connecting her to a moment beyond the chaos. With each story spun from memory, I could see her breathing begin to ease, if only just a little. Yet, the fragility of the moment pulsed around us, and the undercurrent of terror still thrummed like an unseen current beckoning for recognition. Suddenly, the girl's gaze strayed away from my face, eyes widening in horror. I turned, the air expanding into stillness before contorting into disbelief. A small child stood just beyond the nurses. His wide eyes glimmered with unshed tears while his mouth formed a silent help. A guttural churn of dread rose within me, merging with the visceral realization that the child was lost amid the storm. The paramedics had their hands full. They had initially assumed the girl's distress was the only priority. But now, with the urgency of save a life hitting me like a stone, my heart roared back to life with purpose. "Stay with her," I compelled the girl, locking my gaze with her fading terrors, channeling every ounce of courage I could muster. "I'll be right back. Just keep breathing." With one last reassuring squeeze, I rose, racing towards the trembling boy. The cacophony around us grew, blurring into a haze of sound as I knelt before him, trying to offer comfort amidst a tempest. "Hey, buddy," I said softly, my voice a gentle anchor. "What's your name?" "James," he whispered, sniffling as tears rolled down his cheeks like fire flickering in the darkness. "I can't find my mommy." A vice of fear gripped me, the weight of his words hanging heavy in the air. How many other families had been swept into this nightmare? Every instinct screamed at me to find his mother, but the sheer magnitude of chaos left me fumbling in uncertainty. "James, it's going to be okay," I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the roiling sensation in my stomach. "Let's find her together." I took his small hand and together we propelled ourselves through the frantic scene, like searching for light in a realm of shadows. As I navigated the terrifying labyrinth of the emergency room, flashes of pain and suffering blazed before me, overwhelmed faces, battling against the dark. The tension climbed higher, each step a burden I was determined to bear for the boy's sake. And just when hope flickered in the corner of my vision, I was arrested by another haunting scream. This one not far from us. "Lily! Please!" The sound twisted like a dagger, striking deep into my heart, a wave of despair promising to wash me away. I turned abruptly, heart leaping into my throat, as I instinctively recognized the anguished voice. I knew that voice. "Mom?" It escaped my lips before I could smother the disbelief clawing at my reason. Lily's mother, her face contorted with sheer panic, desperately searching through the chaos. Breath caught in my chest, and the world felt knocked off its axis. "Mom!" I cried out again, the word ringing like a bell inside an empty chapel, echoing louder in the swell of turmoil. Jameis' hand slipped from my grasp, but determination held me firm. In that moment, I understood that I had given a part of myself to both the girl and this innocent child. I had immersed my heart in their fears, but the threads had woven a tapestry of strength and interconnectedness that could not be severed. Every moment stretched taut, and with courage bubbling fiercely to the surface, I plunged into the storm, ready to face the tempest that awaited. But destiny has its own design, and as I ran, an unthinkable truth began to unravel in my mind like a slowly opening wound within my heart. I was not prepared for the revelation that awaited me in that fray, a truth that threatened to bind us all in ways I never could have imagined. And as I sprinted toward the echoes of despair, I couldn't shake the feeling that the universe was conspiring to entwine our fates forever in this most unjust turn of life. I surged forward, propelled by instinct and a desperate need to reconnect the fragments of a world spiraling into chaos. Every face I encountered felt unfamiliar, yet strangely intertwined with my own torment. The air thickened, heavy with the metallic scent of fear and desperation, my breath matching the erratic rhythm of my heart. "Lily!" I yelled again, fighting against the tide of urgency that threatened to drown me as I scanned for the source of that desperate voice. In the midst of the turmoil, I caught sight of a familiar figure kneeling near a cluster of frantic paramedics. The world around me slowed, and a single moment crystallized. Lily's mom was cradled between two ambulances, her panic radiating outward like ripples in water. I quickened my pace, determined to bridge the gap between us, desperate to lend the support she undoubtedly needed. Just as I approached, I could hear the painful sobs escaping her lips like a shattered melody. "Lily! Please, God, let her be okay." Each word dripped with raw anguish, tearing at the fabric of my heart, urging me onward. "Ma'am." I called, my voice cutting through the oppressive atmosphere surrounding us. Her head snapped in my direction, and for a fleeting moment, the chaos around us faded. "I'm looking for Lily. We can find her together." The moment hung suspended, a thin thread holding us both in place. The panic that encased Lily's mother began to crack, replaced by a flicker of determination. "You found her!" she exclaimed, desperation fueling her hope as she reeled me into the fray. "You know where she is?" I shook my head, grasping at the threads of our shared fear, trying to weave together an unbreakable bond. "No, but I was with her. I'm sure she's okay. We just need to keep looking." We shared a reluctant nod, recognition mingling with uncertainty, two ships lost in the same tempest, bound by love for a girl caught in a maelstrom of despair. Together, our shared purpose became an anchor in the swirling tide. The eye of the storm surrounded us, and the pulling force of our fears threatened to overwhelm. As we moved deeper through the crowd, weaving past gurneys and overwhelmed medical staff, my heart began to fracture with each anguished cry that pierced the air. I looked toward the girl I had left behind, whose fear still haunted me, a ghost that refused to let go. "James," I murmured, turning my head briefly to ensure the boy was still at my side. "Stay close, okay?" The urgency in my tone was met with trust as he pressed his small hand against mine once more. As we progressed, we stumbled upon a pair of paramedics who abruptly halted their frantic pace, their faces etched with kindness despite the chaos. "We need to help," one of them said, stepping aside to grant us passage through the cluttered hallway. "You're doing good. Keep going." That glimmer of hope, however fleeting, fueled my resolve. If these heroes found strength amidst the storm, then I too could wield compassion as my shield against despair. Yet, as we pushed on, a deeper gnawing fear began to seep into my heart, a constant reminder that every moment we spent searching was a moment filled with uncertainty for Lily. The path that intertwined our fates felt treacherous, revealing an impossible choice ahead. Would we find her? Or had the darkness already claimed her? The two of us reached a point where the cacophony ebbed momentarily, allowing us a brief respite. I turned to Lily's mother, whose eyes shimmered with desperation. "What if she's hurt? What if we—" "Stop," she urged, the weight of her pain coiling around us. "We can't think like that." Her voice trembled beneath the surface, bringing a clarity to the uncertainty that threatened to engulf us both. "Think about what you told her. That she's strong. If we believe in that, then she'll believe it too." Confidence swelled within my chest, igniting a spark that flickered against the encroaching shadows. "You're right," I agreed, returning the grip of her hand. "We can't give in to despair." Just as we prepared to press forward, a blood-curdling wail erupted from down the hallway. It seemed to swallow the air around us, ensnaring both of us in its clawed grip. "Help!" The voice echoed dangerously close to the intensity of the cries we had heard earlier. "Somebody help me!" With a jolt, I turned, instincts rendering the world into a single point of focus. Fate conspired against us, and apprehension flooded my senses. Churning within, I knew that voice. It belonged to Lily. "Lily!" I shouted, propelled by an urgency as primal as the need to breathe. The weight of destiny hit me like a tidal wave, forcing me to run faster, each heartbeat drumming a desperate rhythm against my resolve. We raced toward the sound, tearing through the chaotic room, moving as if tethered by an unseen thread. But as we reached the source, my heart plummeted into an abyss of disbelief. There, collapsed against the cold floor, cradled by the ground itself, was Lily. Her frail figure trembled, surrounded by shadows of paramedics struggling to bring comfort amidst her evident pain, and before I could process the weight of the revelation that stung my heart like shards of glass, I felt a hand on my shoulder, a stranger's grasp yet imbued with understanding. "Keep back," the paramedic instructed gently, and in that moment, the world seemed to slip from beneath my feet. I could feel Lily's terror resonating within me like a symphony of unspoken fears, a haunting reminder that we were all connected by the fragile thread of survival in this moment. No. "She needs me," I cried out, but my protests echoed into the void created by the desperate flurry of action. As I fought against the tempest surrounding us, another chilling realization tore through my heart. James, having slipped from my side in the rush, now stood frozen, his tiny frame overshadowed by overwhelming despair. "Mommy," he wailed, and as the paramedics continued to fight tirelessly around Lily, the weight of that simple word reverberated through me, a chilling reminder of the inescapable bonds of love that connected us all. The weight of it all crashed into me like thunder. We were all woven together in an inextricable pattern of pain and love, yet bound by the terrifying unknown. And as my eyes landed back on Lily, a shiver of dread whispered an unthinkable truth, the nightmare I wasn't yet prepared to confront. This wasn't merely a battle against chaos, it felt as though the universe itself had conspired against us, a dark force entwining our fates in ways I would yet to understand. Fear propelled my fundamentals, but in that solitary instant, I realized the truth. We were not merely fighting for our survival, we were fighting against the very fabric of a harsh reality threatening to shatter our shared world, and I was afraid it might succeed. The fluorescent lights hummed above, bathing the room in a cold, sterile glow that contrasted sharply with the warmth of the emotions swirling within me. I watched as the paramedics tended to Lily, their urgent movements a reflection of the storm that raged inside me. My heart, already splintered by fear, felt as though it were tethered to an anchor of despair, pulling me deeper into the depths of an unknown fate. "James, stay close," I managed to call, though my voice trembled like a fragile leaf in a gust of wind. I turned back toward him, but even as I said the words, I felt the suffocating grip of panic tighten around my chest. The little boy stood transfixed, his wide eyes mirroring the terror that seized my own heart. "I want Mommy," he cried out again, his small voice piercing through the atonal symphony of chaos. All at once, it hit me he needed comfort from me. Yet, how could I offer reassurance when the ground beneath my feet felt so unsteady? "Lily is strong," I whispered to him, my voice steadying only as I drew strength from my promise, though the tremor still echoed in my chest. "She's fighting. We need to believe in her." In that shared moment of uncertainty, with the sounds of anguish echoing all around us, I reached for James' small hand, squeezing it softly. For a heartbeat, I felt a flicker of warmth, an invisible bond between us fortified by shared resilience. In the face of hope, even despair seemed to soften, if only for a fleeting moment. "Please, let her be okay," I murmured under my breath, the words slipping from my lips like a prayer. But even as I spoke, the tremors returned, threading my thoughts into knots of worry that required all my strength to untangle. What if the flicker of hope I held onto was nothing more than a mirage in the desert of our anguish? The paramedics continued their work, voices rising and falling like waves crashing onto the shore. The urgency in their tones encapsulated the turmoil inside me, yet I stood frozen, an unwilling spectator in a tragedy unfolding before my eyes. As I strained to hear the conversations around me, snippets of information pierced through words I dared not acknowledge. Critical condition, need to stabilize, medic. I could feel my heart race, each beat reverberating through my body like a war drum summoning an army of fears. The realization that I was powerless in this moment felt suffocating. I wanted so desperately to rush to Lily's side, to be her shield against torment, but I was held back by the very structure meant to protect us. Suddenly, an unexpected presence joined our midst. A nurse, her face tired yet resolute, noticed James and me lingering in the shadows. With a gentle smile that radiated warmth, she walked towards us, her soft voice breaking through the din. "You two are so brave," she said, kneeling to meet James' gaze. "Can I tell you a secret?" His wide eyes flickered with curiosity, and in that moment, I could see a glimmer of hope igniting, if only just a spark. "What is it?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "That girl you love? She's surrounded by people who care about her very much, just like you do. They're doing everything they can to help her," she reassured, her words wrapping around us like a comforting embrace. "You're being strong for her, and she can feel it, believe me." Somewhere within me, a flicker turned into a flame, and for the first time, I allowed myself to breathe, if only slightly. Hope wove through the cracks in my heart like sunlight breaking through the clouds, reminding me of the power of belief even in the face of overwhelming odds. "Okay," I replied to the nurse, trying to steady my voice. "Thank you." It amazed me how the simplest of gestures, a few kind words, could momentarily lift the crushing weight of despair that lay heavy upon us. Just as we were finding a moment of solace, the wails of a child erupted beyond the chaos, a heart-wrenching cry that tore at the already frayed edges of my composure. "Help! Help! Please!" It poured out like a river of unrestrained emotion. My heart clenched once more as dread coursed through me, a wave of despair overshadowing the flicker of hope that had dared illuminate my thoughts. A cold realization struck me. The voice belonged to another child, a reflection of our worst fears echoing through this labyrinth of uncertainty. My breath quickened, and I turned to the nurse. "What's happening?" I implored, the words spilling from my lips, urgent and raw. "They're doing their best," she responded, her expression serious yet gentle. "Please, be patient." I glanced back at James, his small body shaking again, and in that moment, I felt the fragile thread that connected us begin to fray. Despite the nurse's reassurance, the horror of our situation spiraled once more, and I sensed the tide of fear rising again. And then, as if the universe itself had conspired to mirror our anguish, a sudden commotion erupted nearby. A gurney rushed past, a lifeless body partially covered, wheeled forth with a team of paramedics clutching desperately to hope woven into every action. The chaos spiraled and split time into a million fragmented moments, and I saw the faces of the dearly departed reflected in the ashen expressions of those that labored tirelessly to save them. Panic surged through me, thrumming along the edges of my consciousness. "We have to go!" I yelled, my resolve hardening into action, a newfound urgency propelling me forward. "We can't wait anymore." But as I stepped away, I felt James stumble back against my leg, clutching onto my waist tightly. His tiny voice trembled. "Where are we going?" "I'm scared." How could I reassure him that I was terrified too, that we were crossing a threshold into the unknown, our lives dangling at the mercy of an arbitrary fate? With every fiber of my being, I wished to break the spell of fear with assurance, though the words tangled in my throat. Before I could summon the courage to address his fears, a voice rang out from among the chaos, a voice I knew far too well. "Stop!" It thundered through the maze of despair, slicing through the pandemonium. Lily's mother emerged from the throng, her face a tapestry of anguish and determination, a beacon amidst the surrounding storm. "We need to keep looking. No matter what, we can't stop searching for her." Her words pierced through the layers of fear that encased me. The flicker of resolve sparked anew within, igniting my spirit. I drew James closer, feeling the warmth of his small body against mine. Together, we could face whatever awaited us on the other side of the storm. But as we stepped into the fray, a sharp sound echoed through the chaos, a resonating silence that fell heavily upon us. And in that unbearable stillness, I met the eyes of Lily's mother. Something flickered behind her weary gaze, a question left lingering in the air between us. Fear, perhaps, that this storm would lead to a reckoning we were ill-prepared to face. In that moment of shared vulnerability, we understood our stakes were higher than we could have imagined, weaving together the strands of hope and despair. But as I glanced back to where the paramedics fought and the veil of silence descended, an unsettling truth dawned. It was possible that this search would take more than our collective strength. It could very well demand a price far greater than we had prepared to pay. Every moment stretched endlessly, pulling at the fabric of time like a relentless tide. As we pressed forward, the air in the room thickened with dread and uncertainty, a storm brewing under the fluorescent lights that bore witness to our shared agony. In the midst of it all, I could still feel the warmth of James at my side, his small hand entwined in mine, a fragile connection that anchored me amidst the chaos. "Where's Mommy?" he murmured, his eyes wide and searching, each word echoing within me like a drumbeat of desperation. His innocence tugged at my heart, igniting a fierce need to protect him from the cruel realities of life, realities I had been fighting against for what felt like an eternity. "Mommy is strong, remember?" I whispered back, my voice trembling against the gnawing apprehension clawing at my insides. "She's going to be just fine," but with every word I spoke, layers of doubt crept into my heart, entangled with the shimmering hope that flickered stubbornly within. I wanted to believe in my own words, to throw caution to the wind as we navigated the wreckage of our lives. But the uncertainty felt unbearable, as if we were standing at the edge of an abyss, teetering precariously on the edge. "Please don't leave me," he pleaded, the weight of his small plea pinning me in place. I crouched to his level, searching for the reassuring smile I hoped to find. "That I am right here, buddy. I promise I won't leave you," I vowed, the sincerity of my words wrapping around us like a warm blanket. In that moment, I felt a flicker of strength surge through me, bolstered by his trust. Together, perhaps we could make it through this tempest if only we could hold on to the remnants of hope threaded between us. Moments later, another nurse approached us, a message tucked securely behind her anxious expression. "I have updates," she said softly, scanning our faces before focusing on me. "Lily is stable now. They've managed to control her condition, but she's still in critical state." That I and the darkness that surrounded us, her words felt like shards of light puncturing the heavy veil of despair. It wasn't the resolution I yearned for, but it was something, a breath within the suffocating atmosphere that clung to us. I glanced at James, who looked momentarily relieved, yet unsure of the enormity of what lay ahead. "Can we see her?" I asked, a nervous edge creeping into my voice. "There might be some time before you can visit," she replied, her expression mourning the emotional toll these moments demanded. "I suggest you take a moment to breathe and gather yourselves. Why isn't there an option to get her better right away?" I asked, a surge of frustration straining against the edges of my composure. "We can't just wait. I understand that's hard," she responded, her tone one of tender understanding. "But every moment counts in these situations. It's like a delicate dance, one step forward, sometimes a step back. You'll want to be at your best when Lily is ready to see you. She needs your strength." And just like that, the nurse enveloped us both in a comforting touch, patting James' shoulder gently before excusing herself to tend to other urgent matters. I watched as she retreated, her figure melting back into the fray, leaving us surrounded by an ocean of uncertainty once more. "Can we sit?" James asked, his voice much smaller than I remembered. I nodded absently as I led him toward the waiting area, a sea of empty chairs that felt cold and unwelcoming. The sterile scent clung to my senses like an unwelcome fog, but I forced myself to breathe slowly and deeply. Seated, his gaze wandered around the room, soaking in every detail as though afraid it would somehow slip away. I felt the urge to shield him from the somber shadows that had become our reality, but how could I shield him when the darkness loomed so close? Instead, I let my instinct guide me, reaching out to squeeze his hand again, ensuring he felt the flow of strength that resided within me, while simultaneously offering it as a well of solace. The minutes turned into hours, the digital clock above the reception desk ticking away our fleeting seconds of hope. In the refracting silence, I found myself grappling with feelings of guilt. How could I be sitting here, allowing fleeting moments of calm to soothe me when uncertainty raged just beyond those sterile walls? I felt torn between wanting to stay present for James, the child who clung to hope, and the desperate urge to leap into action for Lily. "Do you think she can hear us?" James broke the silence, his eyes searching mine with an earnestness that struck deep at my core. "I hope so," I responded gently, wishing I could share the certainty of that hope without falter. "I'm sure she can feel us waiting for her." The thought of Lily lying there, battling for consciousness while all we could do was wait, twisted my stomach with dread once more. Suddenly, my phone buzzed in my pocket, a foreign and jarring intrusion that sent my heart into a frenzy. I fished it out, hands shaking as I glanced at the screen. It was a text message from Lily's brother. "I'm on my way. I don't know how to face Mom, but I'll try." A cold shiver ran down my spine as I read the message, layered with unspoken fear and uncertainty. This is supposed to be a moment of connection, yet it felt like the walls around us were closing in, squeezing all semblance of hope. I met James' gaze, a reflection of unspent worry shadowing his small features, and yet, just as despair threatened to engulf us, a figure approached from across the waiting room. Lily's brother, tall and weary, his eyes searching the room for something, someone to anchor him amidst the turmoil. He caught my gaze, his expression shifting from relief to confusion to something else entirely, raw vulnerability that sent a ripple through the air. Before I could react, I saw a flicker of something behind his expression, a revelation dawning too quickly, binding us into an understanding we might not have been prepared to face in the storm. And just as he took a tentative step closer, the ground seemed to shift underfoot, an unsettling tremor that felt like a whispered promise or perhaps a warning. Emotions surged within me once more, a tumultuous mix of uncertainty and hope interweaving through the strands of our lives, binding us tighter in this human experience. As he approached, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were on the precipice of something monumental, something that would connect our fates irrevocably, a truth waiting in the shadows, ready to reveal itself at the most inopportune time. The tension hung thick in the air as Lily's brother advanced, hesitating just a few feet away from us, his eyes darting between me and James. I could see the storm raging within him, a mirror of my own turmoil. Words caught in my throat. I needed to provide comfort, yet my heart raced with uncertainty about how to bridge the chasm of fear and grief that had grown ever wider since this ordeal began. "Hey," he finally managed, his voice cracking as he looked down at James, who was still clutching my hand with a grip that felt all too fragile. "How is she?" "Stable for now," I said, each syllable a labor of hope. "They're working on her." He nodded, but the shadow in his eyes told me he was grappling with something deeper. The weight of possibility hung between us like a taut string, stretched just shy of snapping. "Two don't know how to do this," he confessed, the vulnerability in his tone cutting straight to the heart of all our shared suffering. "It's okay," I whispered, my instinct to reassure rushing to the surface. "We'll figure it out together. We have to believe she can feel us out here, rooting for her." James tugged at my arm, drawing my attention. "Can I talk to him?" His voice was small, yet it bore the wisdom of a child who had seen too much for his tender years. There was a hint of bravery in his glossy eyes, a desire to connect despite the looming dread. "Of course, buddy," I encouraged, encouraging him to take the lead. There was an urgency in my heart, a sense that sharing this moment could unearth something healing in all of us. James shuffled closer to Lily's brother, his body small and yet somehow resolute. "I just want Mommy to wake up," he said earnestly, tilting his head up toward his uncle, as if searching for something solid to hold on to. "Can you help her wake up?" A painful recognition flickered across Lily's brother's face, the kind that comes from standing on the precipice of loss while tethered to hope. "I'll do everything I can," he replied, his voice steadying in the face of a fragile promise. Together, they shared a moment that transcended spoken words, a bond formed through unyielding love and desperation, each willing to grasp at the threads of hope woven together. As I stood by, watching the glimmer of connection manifest, my heart began to swell with an unexpected warmth amidst the cavernous pain that had anchored us in despair. But just as our fleeting moments of connection began to bloom, the sterile waiting room was interrupted by the melodious sound of the hospital intercom, echoing through the sea of anxious souls. "Attention, please. Family of Lily Monroe, please report to room 302. We have an update." I barely processed the announcement before a surge of uncertainty rushed through me, an electric current zipping through the air. With hearts racing, we shared an unspoken agreement: the three of us were in this together, united by the irrevocable ties of family and the trials of love that brought us here, to this very moment. As we stood, the once comforting promise of togetherness now felt heavy with impending dread. Each step toward room 302 felt monumental, a march down a corridor laden with unnameable anxiety. I could feel the pulse of James next to me, his small stature buckling under the weight of fear that almost mirrored the enormity of my own, but then, just as we approached the threshold of that room, another figure appeared, a doctor in a white coat, deep lines etched across his forehead, his expression a careful mask of professionalism laced with compassion. He caught sight of us, a flicker of recognition passing through his eyes, our anxious trio, a canvas of worry painted in different strokes, all hoping for a miracle. Family of Lily Monroe? He queried, his voice an anchor amidst the storm of emotions. Yes, I answered, my throat tight. We're here. What's happening? There's been a complication, he began, and the words spiraled out with a heavy finality, echoing against the walls of my heart as I braced myself for the impact of the unknown. Just as hope had begun to mend our shattered spirits, I could feel its threads fraying once more, an inevitable reminder that this journey was far from over. And there's something we need to discuss. It may affect her treatment moving forward. Each word felt like a cold gust of wind stealing warmth from within, and I instinctively glanced down at James, who had gone pale, understanding little yet absorbing everything. Before I could even speak, the gravity of the moment cemented us in silence, waiting for the horrendous truth that loomed just out of reach, its shadow threatening to swallow us whole. As the doctor gestured toward the private room, a chill raced down my spine. In that moment, I understood we were standing on the threshold not just of understanding more about Lily's fate but of confronting the frailty of hope in a world that was determined to test us at every turn. And deep down, I feared that unraveling the consequences of our family's journey might just lead to answers we weren't prepared to face. Hope flickered precariously amid an impending storm, and as the doors swung open, the whisper of uncertainty loomed, ready to reveal a reality far beyond my darkest imaginings. I stood at the threshold of reality, everything around me fading into a muted blur as I prepared to step into a moment that promised to change everything. The sterile scent of the hospital melded with the weight of apprehension, wrapping around us like a shroud. I could hardly breathe as I exchanged glances with Lily's brother and James, whose innocent eyes mirrored the storm brewing within my own heart. We were about to face something immense, something that threatened to pull the flimsy threads of hope from our grasp. The doctor, with his sharp demeanor softened by a flicker of compassion, ushered us into the small room. The atmosphere felt charged, thick with every unspoken fear. I could barely focus as I took in Lily, her stillness defying the pulse of life that continually pushed forward around us. Monitors quietly beeped, a rhythmic reminder of both fragility and hope. I crowded closer, desperate to bridge the distance that dread had formed. A heavy silence settled in, and the weight of those final words hung in the air like an impending storm. Complication. The word echoed, danced around us until it settled into a reality none of us were prepared to face. Just as I vexed over what he might say, my heart plummeted further at the sight of Lily, pale, yet beautiful. A warrior enshrined in a fortress built from the turmoil laid bare before her. The doctor cleared his throat, a gesture filled with the gravitas of the moment. Lily is stable in the sense that she is alive, but we've encountered complications with her treatment. Her body is reacting poorly to the medications. Each syllable felt like a blow, tearing through the fragile hope that had begun to bear fruit. The potential for healing seemed to slip further from our grasp. I felt Lily's brother tense beside me, his breathing quickening. "What does that mean?" he asked, a tremor of panic evident in his voice. "Can she recover?" The doctor's gaze flickered to the floor, a silent admission of the uncertainty we faced. "We need to adjust her medications and monitor her closely, but it's imperative you prepare for all possible outcomes. We still have a fight ahead of us." My heart felt heavy, lodged deep within my chest as grief mingled with fear. I wanted to speak, to rage against the injustice of it all. How could life continue to throw these cruel twists when the world was already hanging by a thread? James shifted beside me, tiny fingers gripping at my shirt as though he could draw strength from me, but honestly, I felt hollow. It was hard to make promises in this dark moment. A promise that everything would be okay felt utterly impossible to honor. I knelt down so we were eye level. "Lily is strong, just like you," I whispered, searching for warmth in my own wavering resolve. "Together, we'll be here for her." James nodded slowly, determination mingling with fear behind his wide, expressive eyes. I could feel the weight of his little heart, a heart that had already endured too much. Just then, Lily stirred slightly, and my breath caught again. Deep down, I dared to hope. I wanted her to be an anchor for us all, a beacon of resilience. She has to wake up, James murmured softly, and something within me pulsed in acknowledgement. I glanced up at Lily's brother, who appeared lost in thoughts of his own, an introspective storm swirling through him. You have to tell her how much you need her, I urged, the quiet conviction bolstering my own heart that in that weighty moment, something shifted. I could see the flicker of understanding dance across Lily's brother's face, and realization caught in his eyes. You're right, he exclaimed suddenly, taking a step forward. He knelt beside Lily, a gentle hand resting on her head, and through trembling breaths, he began to speak, a torrent of love suspended in the air. You can't leave us, Lily. We need you. Mom needs you. Fight for us. We're here. We're waiting for you. His voice broke, the rawness cutting through me like a blade. Tears pricked at my eyes as I absorbed the weight of his words, and I shifted closer, placing my hand atop his before reaching out to hold on to James' small fingers as well. Together, we formed an unbreakable bond, a sanctuary of strength that began to pulse warmth through the frigid uncertainty surrounding us. Fight, Lily. I echoed, my voice raw yet resolute as I urged her spirit to hear us. You're the heart of this family, your fight becomes our fight as well, stronger and united. The silence within the room transformed into a tangible energy flowing between us as we each clung to the thread of hope, a quiet undercurrent of belief threading our lives together. A shift caught my attention, a flicker across Lily's face, as if she was absorbing our shared strength. In the midst of despair, a light began to emerge, an epiphany birthed through shared vulnerability. The intensity heightened as I felt a smile creep to my lips amidst my tears, a profound promise blooming from the depths of our pain. Maybe hope could thrive even in the bleakest of moments. A deep breath filled my lungs, and in that moment, something magical happened. A soft glow emanated from Lily, the monitors around her responding to the energy growing within the room. An echo of life surged from one to the other, rebounding back and lifting us into a collective breath of hope. Wake up, Lily! James shouted, his small voice laced with fire. In perfect unison, we leaned closer, our hearts beating as one. And then it happened, the moment that shattered everything I once believed about hope and its limitations. Her eyes fluttered, the first hint of life returning to the deep well of stillness that had consumed her. Lily! I gasped, my heart racing as I caught sight of those familiar brown irises, blooming back into consciousness, a spark lighting behind the pain. As her gaze found mine, I could almost feel the world shift, the heaviness of despair rolling back to give way to the dawning light of renewal. We're here, I said gently, tears slipping down my face, an unrestrained cascade amid the joy bursting on the horizon. We believe in you. Her fingers twitched, connecting once more, a soft tether that reminded me that even in despair, love could bridge every chasm of uncertainty. Lily's small smile transformed the heaviness that had pulled us all under. A moment of hope reshaped and reborn, illuminated by our fierce determination to hold on to life together, and as we called out her name in rhythm, I felt a warm light threading through us all, binding our fears and hopes into something resilient, a promise that together, we could rise through the storm and pave the way toward healing. In that moment, hope felt real, tangibly a colorful thread woven into the fabric of our lives. You're not alone, Lily, I whispered through my tears. We'll fight with you, now and always, and I knew, as the warmth of her presence spread through the room, that together we'd find the strength necessary to guide us through any storm ahead. In the end, love had shown us the way, transforming despair into something divine, a renewed connection forever anchored in our hearts. Hope is not a dream, I whispered as I held her gaze, but a promise waiting to be fulfilled.